Welcome to Focus on Health, a series of educational programs highlighting current health issues sponsored by the Department of Nursing at Salisbury University. I'm Dr. Mary DiBartolo, Professor of Nursing at Salisbury University and host of the program. I welcome today from MAC Incorporated, our local area agency on aging, Karla Beardsley. Thanks for coming in today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I enjoy
Now you are a registered dietitian, and you also are the nutrition program director at MAC Inc. We'll call it MAC for short.
Okay.
Very important organization in our region, and I just thank you again for coming in. And we're here to talk about an important specialized topic, although it could apply to just about everyone, is healthy eating after 60. So first, let's start off with, what are some of the changes as people get older? And we have a lot of baby boomers, who are in that age category, in terms of how the body changes and how it impacts nutrition.
And truly, this is an area that we need to look at. To back up a little bit, MAC stands for Maintaining Active Citizens, Mary. So what we're trying to do in our endeavor for the whole agency is keep people living independently in their homes, and so to recognize in their bodies the changes is important. And first of all, we can even start with the head. So as the person ages, you think of smell and taste, they lose some of that. They might lose part of their ability to chew, their dentition, or maybe they get dentures. And so this is going to affect how they can chew or what they can chew. It's one thing to chew an apple, but they can also eat an apple if, for example, they cut it up. But if a person has arthritis, sometimes this affects their ability to prepare the food, and they can no longer use the utensils such as cutting with their hands, as well as they need to cut the food up smaller to chew. As the food travels through the body, sometimes they produce less gastric juices, maybe less spit, maybe less juice in their digestive system in the stomach to digest food. We also find that as it travels through the intestines, sometimes we absorb less nutrients from the intestinal tract. As it travels down to, that might mean extra fiber is needed to help the food move through the body. And the last thing too, when you're thinking about changes in nutrients, the body tends to be slower as it's aging. So we might not need as many calories, and therefore a person can gain weight easily if they're taking in more calories than they need.
It's a slowing down of the metabolism and so on. And you
Right.
might have to exercise a little more too if you're able.
Yes, exactly.
So Karla, what about the kidneys? What role do they have?
And truly, as the kidneys age, we find that they are less effective in removing the toxins from the body or the digestive products that are not used. And so again, with sodium and potassium, that's an electrolyte issue that we're looking at. So what we're thinking is that the complication where we lost the taste and the person wants more sodium in their foods or salt. And in some situations they love sweets because they can't taste as significantly.
The taste buds change, yeah.
Exactly. So those taste buds are important. And then again, when we're looking at the kidneys, the protein is digested, and the products that go through the kidneys are partly the protein issue. So what you want to know is that we need to be careful for a lot of different components with the kidneys.
So I guess back with the sodium, people may tend to use a little more to get the taste of it, and yet your kidneys don't excrete it as well, so
Right.
you can build up more sodium, and we know sodium's not as good in
Right.
terms of blood pressure problems and so on.
Right. And the newest trend is that if you balance or increase the potassium, then that balance is there. So we try to encourage a lot of high potassium foods before the kidneys might be damaged.
Well, besides bananas, what are those high potassium foods?
Well, believe it or not, but a potato with the skin on it is a good source of potassium. Prunes, those are good, and even some of the animal foods like chicken is a good source of potassium. All fruits and vegetables have potassium in them.
Now let's talk a little bit about both body mass and bones and how that affects what older adults might need.
Good. The bones in the older adult are, again, breaking down. And so to maintain them, one needs a sustained and a good intake of calcium. But in order to absorb the calcium, you need vitamin D. And that's the nutrient that is very difficult to get from foods. We call that the sunshine vitamin, not that we get all of it from the sunshine, but the sunshine converts the vitamin D in the body so that it can help with the digestion of the food and creating energy in the body. And so again, if the bones need to stay strong, but the muscles around them also need to hold the bones. And that is about the lean body mass. Anything that's in the body that is not fat is considered lean body mass. And this is what decreases when a person is bedridden, when they don't have enough protein in the diet, when they don't get enough calories, or are missing some other nutrients as well.
And less exercise if they're not as active.
Right.
So not getting outside doesn't help with the vitamin D and calcium issue.
So the more sitting, the more loss of the lean body mass. And that results in more falls, just the inability to heal. The immune system goes down with the lean body mass going down as well.
Well, we always hear you are what you eat, and it is very important as far as keeping your body strong and active and immune system and healing and all those things. So let's get back to basics for a moment, if you don't mind, and just talk about the three major components of carbs, proteins, and fats, and what people should aim for as far as percentage of overall calories.
Okay. And each one of those are forms of what we call energy. And the vitamins and minerals are not energy, but they help the body to absorb and use the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So typically speaking, 50% of the diet should come from carbohydrates. And that's a quick energy. It's utilized quickly in the body. And then we look at the next nutrient with the same number of calories, that would be protein. So we typically say 15 to 20% of the diet should come from protein foods. And the last would be the fats, form of energy, and about 30% of your total calories should come from fats.
So more fats than protein, actually.
Yes, in terms of calories.
Oh, okay.
So keep in mind that a spoonful of protein is half the calories of a spoonful of fat.
Right, fats are more calories per serving or
Right.
ounce or whatever. And of course, we'll talk more about fats later, that there's better fats than others. You should avoid saturated fats.
Right.
And of course, protein's very important for building muscles and so on.
Yes.
But let's get back to carbs for a moment,
Okay.
because there are some carbs that are better than others. And I think in this country, we have a problem with a lot of processed foods and sugars and so on. So let's talk about carbs for a moment. And
So
you're saying they're important for the brain too.
They're important for the brain because they are broken down very quickly and easily. And so a small amount of carb, which contains other nutrients along with the carbohydrate, makes it a good carb, or one that can help the body. So if a carb has just sugars, then it's going to miss other nutrients along with it. However, if a carb has fiber and B vitamins such as bread, or if it's enriched with other vitamins and minerals, that's going to make it a more nutritious carbohydrate. Some carbohydrates such as fruit contain many vitamins and minerals. Some carbohydrates such as milk contains potassium, protein as well, and the calcium we were talking about. So the basic forms of carbohydrate are found in, as we said, grains and breads, fruits, and of course some juices, and then also in the milks. So there are many kinds of carbohydrates that we don't want to leave out of the meal plans.
I know bread's gotten a bad rap of late, and people should eat more whole grain breads versus white bread per se to get the fiber and more of the nourishment.
Right. With the fiber, that means that it's going to stay in the gut, in the stomach a little longer and make a person feel full. It's going to also, with the fiber, help the meal travel through the digestive system more easily. And when we eat, we want our food to stay with us. And that's going to make a difference. The fiber doesn't have vitamins and minerals, but bread and wheat and oats, they all have vitamins and minerals that contribute to the nutritional value.
And what about the total number of calories needed per day by an older person? Is that low, or maybe give us an estimate of how many calories people need? I know it's affected by physical activity as well.
Right. So the calories are different for males and females. Generally, a moderate level active woman would need 1,600 calories a day. And if she's more active, she could go up in her calories. A moderate level man would need about 2,000 calories. And here again, a male body has a higher muscle, and that quality requires more calories.
Let's talk a little bit more about there's some diets that have been out there. I hate to use the word diet, but for a while there we kept hearing about the DASH diet. What exactly does that mean, and where are we now in terms of the recommendations for older adults, and of course I think all people really?
The DASH diet came about as a tool to help people lower their blood pressure. And basically when we look at the aging body, the blood vessels decrease in their ability to act like rubber bands and move the blood through the body. So when a person's blood pressure goes up, then that is deteriorating their vascular system. So the DASH diet originated with getting the electrolytes in control, and it provides magnesium, it provides calcium, potassium, but less sodium. So DASH stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension. And this is one of the tools that we have been using to help people recognize where the sodium is in their foods that they're eating.
And now we're moving more towards talking about the Mediterranean diet. So what exactly is that? Because I think that's good advice for everyone.
The Mediterranean diet encourages a person to have 9 servings of fruits and or vegetables a day. So that's a lot of fruits and vegetables, but it also encourages somebody to use the fats that are healthy, and specifically the olive oils, which is a monosaturated fat, and to use nuts for their fats. Again, when the aging body can't chew the nuts, then you have to look at other ways to get the nut into the body.
Well, nuts got a bad rap for years too, and now we know they're actually good for you. I mean, not in excess, but they provide the good kind of fat, the mono or the polysaturated fat. So it's just funny how we've come to learn so much more about nutrition these days. So the Mediterranean diet, and of course fruits and vegetables. It's better to eat something in its whole form versus to drink it. To drink it in a juice, because they tend to be high in sugars.
Exactly. Not only do you get the fibers, but you get many nutrients when you get the fruit in the whole form. And sometimes we miss out because it's a process, saying that we put the juice through to, or the fruit through to make it into a juice.
Well, I know the other big thing you're seeing a lot in the media is the focus on decreasing sugary drinks, such as sodas and such, that have no nutritional value. They have a lot of sugar in them.
Right. And that sugar is a form of carbohydrate, like we were talking about earlier, but the sugar itself, whether it's high fructose sugar or glucose, or these are some of the tools that give a person quick energy, but you don't want the large amount that goes in. A person can drink 200 calories very quickly to quench their thirst or their desire for fluids. And again, the senior body or aging body needs that fluid, but they don't need the sugar along with it.
So definitely water is the beverage of choice, particularly in the summer when older adults can become dehydrated.
Right.
And of course, I find that it's really hard to get fluids into older adults sometimes, or encourage people to drink water as much.
And the aging body loses its thirst. They no longer feel that thirst like you and I would. And so for their memory has to bring them to the attention, I need to drink a glass in the morning, and lunchtime, in the evening, so they're not actually trying to get all of their fluids in the night when they actually want to be resting.
And of course, we have to mention that some people may not be able to drink as much fluid because of restriction of some kind with kidneys or heart.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get back to sodium for a minute. What is the recommendation for sodium?
At this point, the new dietary guidelines state 2,300 milligrams a day. And
It used to be 2,000 or less, and now it's...
it used to be, last year it was 1,500, so we've come up a little bit. But to counteract that, we're teaching that we need more potassium and more magnesium.
Oh, okay.
So again, the electrolyte balance is going to be created and help the kidneys with that situation.
Of course, sodium is not just salt. It's a preservative. It's in a lot of things, MSG, so people have to be careful. And I guess that's the other reason why it's best to not eat as many processed foods, because they tend to have more sodium in them.
Exactly. So the processing, even in a slice of bread, and when you look at the fact that a slice of bread has a lot of sodium because it's processed, it's going to help keep it on the shelf longer. And so the availability is going to be there, but the sodium is very high in breads. Naturally, sodium comes in many foods, and those foods are okay. But what we're saying is beware of what you add to the food in the form of the salt shaker or condiments. Ketchup is high in salt, mustard, some of those things that make the food taste better.
Yeah, I try to use pepper more so, and you should always taste your food
Right.
before you salt it. And a lot of people just, it's a habit of salting food.
It's a habit, and what we know is that you can change your taste buds for sodium. The more you give it, the more you want. So as you generally turn to decreasing the amount of sodium, pretty soon a bowl of soup is going to taste salty to you, especially if it's coming out of a can.
Right. And what about iron? Are there different needs for iron as you get older?
Truly, it depends on again, if you've had some kind of problem with blood, if you're having a treatment that removes the iron level from the blood, and I would recommend getting a blood test to actually know if the body needs more iron.
If you are deficient in
Yes.
iron. And getting back to calcium, I know you hear this about most vitamins and minerals. It's best to get them from the food and beverages that you eat and drink versus taking a supplement.
Right.
But is it indicated in some older adults to take a calcium supplement? People can buy Tums over the counter, which is basically calcium.
Right. The physicians or the medical staff will help someone with the recommendation of what kind of calcium to take because it can interfere with the absorption of other medications or other foods in general. It can cause constipation for some people. So there's a lot of areas where when you're looking at calcium and the absorption of it, that it's not always just that supplement.
Right.
Our body can only absorb about 500 milligrams at one time, so you wouldn't want to take all the calcium at the same time. And again, whether or not there's vitamin D present, because without the vitamin D, the body can't absorb it.
And what about cholesterol? Where are we on cholesterol? That had a bad name for a long time. Don't eat eggs. Now we're
yes.
back to eggs are an excellent food source.
Right. What we say now is that many times the foods that have a lot of cholesterol, that cholesterol is not affecting the cholesterol in the blood. So what affects the cholesterol in the blood is the saturated fat in the diet. So we strongly discourage saturated fats, and that will help a person to eliminate the cholesterol that they're actually making in their digestive system. So human beings do make their own cholesterol, just like all animals. And some people make more than others. And so when you get your cholesterol checked, that indicates what you're making. We do tend to believe that lowering the saturated fat is going to help to lower the blood cholesterol.
And they found, I've thought, that cholesterol is more about a genetic issue versus eating
Right.
foods. So that's why we're more looser now about you can have eggs.
You can have
And they're a wonderful
eggs.
protein.
Right. With people who have diabetes or problems with blood sugar should limit their eggs to about 5 yolks a week. And other people, we recommend 1 egg a day as a good amount of eggs.
And let's talk a little bit about portion control, which
Okay.
can be a problem across the board. I know you said you had a little trick where you use your hands to determine portions
Right.
for the choose my plate approach.
Right, so we're learning that sometimes the aging body can gain weight very easily, and so portion control would help somebody to get just the right amount of nutrients that they need in a meal and feel satisfied and nourished until they eat again. And we all have hands. Some hands are larger than other people's hands, so typically speaking, your hand is a good measure of your portion control. And you can actually put your hands together and think of it like the fingers. The fingers would be the fruits and the vegetables. This palm could be the protein portion. This palm could be the carbohydrate portion. So the fingers together would represent the milk serving. So that's a good reminder of fruits, vegetables, protein, carbohydrate, and dairy. And that should provide a person with the nutrients that they need for a meal, not just in one day. And that meal should happen typically 3 times a day at least.
And of course, the better proteins, and they also use a deck of cards too, which is
True.
similar to the palm, would be like your chicken, your fish. I mean, meat isn't totally out of the picture, but you shouldn't eat too much meat because
True.
of the fatty
Right.
content in that. So that's a good rule of thumb, I should say,
Yes.
pardon the expression, to keep track of
Right.
portion control. Because I know we were talking before the program that as far as directing nutritional programs at MAC, you're seeing 2 big issues. You're seeing seniors that have obesity issues, which actually is a problem across the age groups, and also malnutrition, which is a more difficult problem to overcome, I mean.
Exactly, and malnutrition means that the body is not getting nutrients that it needs to meet its nutritional requirements. So it can actually be a single nutrient that it's missing that will cause malnutrition. It can be where, because of lack of availability to get the protein sources that they need, perhaps a person can't afford fruits and vegetables. That, again, is a limited availability to getting what they need, so we call that malnutrition. What happens with malnutrition is that they lose their many functions. One could be that they are no longer able to have an immunity system that's strong. Sometimes they lose that lean body mass, which can increase their falls. Some people cannot heal, whether it's from a chronic disorder, chronic diseases such as diabetes, or from wounds. So we see that they might end up going back to the hospital more frequently. And lastly, sometimes when we look at malnutrition, we look at the fact that it can decrease a person's cognitive abilities, and therefore the aging process quickens.
And we're hearing a lot about the right foods to eat to help with keeping a healthy brain, as many
Right.
seniors are worried about Alzheimer's disease and so on.
Right.
And they actually call it the MIND diet now. And it's very similar to the Mediterranean diet, and
Right.
just making sure you get those antioxidants and things that come from berries and
Exactly.
such. But that can be challenging, can it? Because these foods are more expensive.
They are more expensive, and so when we think of what to stay away from, what can hurt the brain, what we talk about is staying away from lots of sweets, and we talk about staying away from those processed foods, especially the processed meats. And so those are the things that if you stay away from those foods, everything else is going to be healthy and provide the nutrients that you need. But those other foods decrease the quality they decrease the nutrients that you're trying to get in the diet. They take up calorie space, and therefore the calories that you need are not coming from what you actually need.
And of course, portion control and eating the wrong foods will contribute to the obesity problem, which is dangerous as well.
Exactly. When obesity hits, it's very hard to change that because, again, the activity level of someone who's aging goes down. And we also know that with obesity, that's an increase in fat, but it's not increasing in the lean body mass, which is indicated for sustaining mobility, sustaining balance, for sustaining body functions that you need.
Well, Karla, as we wrap up, let's just come up with some three, really take-home points that you'd like to emphasize.
I think that as the body ages, that we need to think quality versus quantity. The quality of what you put in your mouth is going to make or break your health in the future. And the quality should come from low-fat dairy products. It should come from unprocessed foods, and it should also come from those foods that are low in the saturated fats. So that would probably hit the nail on the head if we think
Right.
that way every time we're looking at foods.
And quality carbs. I mean,
Yes.
carbs are not bad. You need
Carbs are not
to
bad.
fuel your body.
Exactly.
So, and you say getting away from obviously processed foods, which can be difficult because they tend to be cheaper, they stay on the shelf longer, people tend to buy them, and
Right.
versus the fruit and vegetable aisles, which tend to be more expensive.
Exactly. So when cooking, just think in terms of cooking for a couple meals ahead of time, so that when you do cook, the food can be used for several meals, because the opposite of processed foods is foods that take time to cook or spending time in the kitchen. And so again, if you can minimize the labor involved in putting that meal together, then you're going to be feeling like you have eliminated the processing but done it yourself.
Yeah, that's good advice too, because a lot of seniors live alone, and to cook for just one person all the time, it's better to make a few meals at a time. You can
Exactly.
freeze them or heat them up later in the week, and you're still eating healthy without the labor-intensive cost involved.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Karla, for being on the program. And really, this advice is important for everyone.
Yes, it is.
What to eat and the portion control for maintaining health.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Focus on Health here on PAC 14.